Having MS is hard. It is really freaking hard. But we have a choice in how we respond to challenges. My pastor gave a sermon on optimism and the importance of holding on to hope recently. Today, I'd like to share my thoughts on optimism and hope. Winston Churchill once said, "A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, and an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." According to an article in Psychology Today, optimism reflects the belief that the outcome of events or experiences will generally be positive. Or optimists are likely to see the causes of failure or negative experiences as temporary rather than permanent, specific rather than global, and external rather than internal. Optimists expect the best when things don't work out, and they learn from it, and they expect things to be better in the future. Things definitely don't work out the way we expect when we're diagnosed with a chronic illness. But can we expect things to be better in the future? Absolutely. How lucky are we to live in this time with MS? There's over 20 different disease-modifying therapies available to help slow down or stop our MS progression, and we're on the cusp of more. Just 30 years ago, there were no DMTs at all. We live in a time where we're still learning how diet and lifestyle changes can help us. There's more and more research showing that what we eat, how we move, how we rest, and how we manage stress can have a positive impact on our symptoms and possibly prevent progression. And technology? It seems like every week I'm seeing new and innovative products to help us live well with our symptoms and our disabilities, like the Bioness, the Psionic Neuro Sleeve, the Zine, and other cool and innovative mobility aids. So, can we expect things to be better in the future? We sure can. Seeing how much things have changed already gives me hope. Let's take a look at what some of the research says about optimism. In a paper published by Harvard Medical School, optimism helps people cope with disease and recover from surgery. Even more impressive is the impact of a positive outlook on overall health and longevity. Research tells us that an optimistic outlook early in life can predict better health and lower rate of death during a follow-up period of 15 to 40 years. Well, that's cool. Do any of you want to cope better with disease, have better overall health, and increase longevity? There are two ways to measure optimism: dispositional optimism and explanatory style. There are questionnaires that researchers use to categorize and measure optimism. Dispositional optimism depends on positive expectations for one's future. It's about having a generalized expectation for good outcomes. Those with dispositional optimism tend to think things will work out okay. The explanatory style is based on how a person explains good or bad news. A pessimist looks at bad news and takes the blame. "It's my fault." Assumes it won't get better and assumes it's going to affect everything they do. The optimist looks at good news and takes credit for it, assumes good things will last, and assumes goodness will spill into other areas of their lives. There are many studies showing better health outcomes for people who are optimists. This article from Harvard went on to say a large and short-term study evaluated the link between optimism and overall health in 2,300 older adults. Over 2 years, people who had a positive outlook were much more likely to stay healthy and enjoy independent living than their less cheerful peers. And in another study, they found that over a 30-year period, optimism was linked to better outcomes on 8 measures of physical and mental function and health. Not only that, but optimistic people live longer too. In a 30-year study, they found that optimism was linked to longevity. For every 10-point increase in pessimism on the optimism-pessimism test, the mortality rate rose 19%. And in another study that was 40 years long, they found that pessimism took a substantial toll. The most pessimistic individuals had a 42% higher rate of death than the most optimistic. So clearly, being optimistic can help us live better and longer with our MS or chronic illness. But how do we become more optimistic? Mick Jagger said, "You can't always get what you want, But if you try sometimes, well, you might find you get what you need. I believe he's right. It's about trying. It's about adapting to change too. We may not get the outcomes we want or expect with our MS, but we can adapt. In another article in Psychology Today, they offered 4 tips on how to become more optimistic. 1, choose your own version of optimism. We don't have to be happy all the time or in a way that is forced, but we can start to implement optimistic thoughts and ideas into our days. We can start to notice when we have negative thoughts and try to turn them around. For instance, instead of looking at a rainy day as gray and gloomy, we can try to look at it as peaceful. Or instead of seeing our disease-modifying treatment as something that causes yucky side effects, we can envision it as protection, like a guard that's stopping progression. The more we practice turning our thoughts optimistic, the more it will become a habit. The second is to start questioning pessimistic thoughts. Our thoughts are not facts, and we can question them. How many remember how it felt when you were first diagnosed? Did any of you feel like your world was ending? Did you feel like you were doomed to be disabled and not to be able to care for yourself? I did. I completely bought into the belief that MS is a progressive, degenerative, incurable disease. Yeah, not so much. Here I am, still doing well 17 plus years after my first relapse. We can and should question our pessimistic thoughts. I invite you to pause the next time you're having thoughts like this and question, are they really true? A third is to surround yourself with other optimists. Simply being around optimistic people makes us more optimistic. When I was first diagnosed, I started looking for MS support groups in my area. I attended several, and there were a couple that were full of negative Nancys and Captain Bring-Me-Downs. It could have been easy for me to get pulled into their negative space. They say that misery loves company, and commiserating with people that understand can seem tempting. Don't do it. Run from those kind of people. Search for the ones that are taking steps to live as well as they can with their MS. You will find that their optimism is infectious. Fourth is to not force optimism. Becoming more optimistic is like any new habit. It can take time. It requires motivation and practice. The more we catch our thoughts and choose new ones and question the negative ones, the easier it will become. A tip we can try to help is to wear an elastic band on our wrist or one of those rubber bracelets. Every time we find we're having a pessimistic thought, stop ourselves and put it on the other wrist. This physical movement will help us to change our thoughts and to help us to get more in the habit of being more optimistic, choosing more optimistic thoughts. Optimism can help us move forward. Hope helps us to see opportunities in our futures. We don't know the twists and turns our lives are going to take, but with a bit of optimism and hope, we can learn and adapt and move forward. What do you think? Can we become more optimistic? Do you have tips on becoming more optimistic? Please leave me your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear from my viewers. As always, I will link the articles in the description below if you would like to check them out. Check out the videos on your screen next for more on living well with MS or chronic illness. Please like and subscribe to help the channel and so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Until next time, be well.